All right， 好，各位来宾朋友们，大家好。And 非常感谢天莎给我们邀请我们今天来演讲一下。So today I'm going to talk about your Canadian advantage, a case study in attracting global talent. First up, I have to say, I will tell you all I have a secret agenda. And my secret agenda is that by the end of this presentation, I hope to have convinced you all to invest in Canada. This is not so subtle. I'm wearing the Invest in Canada 口罩，可以看吗？ But officially what I want to do is very quickly talk to you about how it is that Canada has been successful in attracting and retaining global tech talent. What are the policies we've used to achieve this? And some of these, I hope, will be relevant here in Taiwan. Next slide, please. 下一页. Okay, so first up, let me convince you that we're doing a good job. So let's see, I've got the pointer here. Yes. So these numbers are from CBRE, which, as some of you know, Coldwell Banker Richard Ellis, the largest commercial real estate services company in the world. And what they illustrate are how many net tech jobs have been created in various major centers across North America. And you'll see for 2021, at the very top of the list is Toronto, with a net gain of more than 54,000 technology jobs. And I can tell you, we've been watching these numbers for the last 7 years, I believe, and over the last 7 years, Toronto has been either 1 or 2 along with the San Francisco Bay Area. Last year, I'm not sure why, San Francisco fell off the top 2 spot, top 1 or 2 spot. But you can also see, what I want to point out, these are Canada's major cities here: Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Quebec, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. And you'll notice up here that all of them appear in a net positive position. So how is this? What has Canada done to help to attract global tech talent and to maintain that talent? So next slide, please. Number one, of course, is immigration. Canada is a country built on immigrants, right? And you can see here on this graph here, this is going all the way back to the 1800s. This is the number of immigrants that were accepted and brought into Canada. The numbers have been going up. The green line, this is the percentage of the population. So you can see in the past couple of decades that the number of immigrants coming into Canada each year equates to about 1% of the entire population. Every year, bringing in 1% of your population. So we had, of course, like everyone, we faced a slowdown due to COVID, and the government of Canada implemented a number of policies to try and restart the economy. One of them was related to immigration. We increased our targets. In 2021, Canada brought in the most immigrants ever since the year 1913, 405,000 new Canadians. And you can see here that we set new targets for 2022. The targets are at the bottom here. 2023 and 2024 that are going even higher. This is an extremely aggressive and open immigration policy. Our natural rate of increase in Canada fell last year to 0.1%, the lowest ever. Taiwan is in a similar situation. However, Canada's population, total population, is not expected to decline for the next 50 years because of immigration. And in fact, we've seen the fastest total population growth in the last 5 years, adding 1.8 million citizens. So this has had a huge impact, positive impact on the Canadian economy. You can see up here too a note. Toronto is now considered the most diverse city in the world, where more than half the population was born not just outside Toronto, but outside of Canada. Next slide, please. So immigration is important. Another big factor, foreign students. So let me share this with you. You can see it's a big number. At any one time, we have over 600,000 foreign students in Canada. It's just a huge number. And if you think about it, the most ideal immigrants for Taiwan, for Canada, for pretty much anywhere, will be young, smart talent, usually coming from well-to-do families, among the smartest, right? So we could get into the top universities. young people who graduate in your country from one of your universities have the skill set, have the languages to succeed. So they're number one target, I have to say. And if you look here, this is the number of study permits Canada's been issuing year after year. Now, one other thing that's been very important for this is the fact that in Canada, when we give a study permit to a student, it also serves as a work permit. So students are allowed to work in Canada with their study permit. Once they graduate, they have 90 days, they can apply for a post-graduation work permit, which is valid for another 3 years. So in Canada, this explains why about 50% of the foreign students that come into Canada stay beyond their graduation. Not only that, about 30% become permanent residents in Canada. And once you've got your PR card, your permanent residency, if you've been in Canada for at least 3 of the last 5 years, you're eligible to apply for citizenship. So this is an extremely important factor in growing our global talent pool in Canada. And it's a huge competitive advantage for Canadian companies and foreign investors in Canada. Next slide, please. Now, I have to mention, related to students, we have this great program, MyTax. And just very quickly, MyTax is a not-for-profit, it's an NGO, lots of support from different levels of government in Canada, and their sole purpose is to connect Canadian universities, there are about 70 of them, 70, with companies in Canada, so that the companies can attract students, especially graduate students, for internship positions in their, and this builds linkages between the large companies in Canada and small with the tech talent at Canadian universities. So just to give you an idea, the 5-year budget for MyTax is $850 million Canadian. Some companies, like Ericsson is an example of a foreign investor in Canada that signed an agreement with MyTax, and they have multiple students, graduate students, coming to do internship positions of up to 6 months in Ericsson in Canada. Half of the cost is covered by MyTax and governments in Canada. So it only costs the companies that work with MyTax 50%. Now, a little bit of good news there for Taiwan is that MyTax has now signed an agreement a couple of years ago with National Changgong Dashui, Tainan. And we have 200 funded positions up for grabs for Taiwanese companies that want to work with or attract, for example, maybe Canadian students that are specialists in artificial intelligence or biomedicine to come here to work on particular problems with companies here and build those linkages with Canadian universities. So we can talk a little bit more about that later if there's time. But next slide, please. Another one, making room for your talent. So as everywhere, you know, I remember in Canada there's been a long debate. Some companies really are short of labor. And they've been applying, usually it's firms, it's maybe sort of meat packing plants or jobs that most Canadians don't want to do. And so those companies look abroad to bring in foreign talent, and it's never been that easy. Well, starting in 2017, the government in Canada realized that it wasn't just the low-end jobs. There was a shortage of some workers in the high-end or the tech sectors and specialized areas as well. So there was a decision made to introduce a new policy, the Global Skills Strategy, to make it much easier for both Canadian companies and foreign investors in Canada to bring in the tech talent that they need, the engineers and so on. It was a bit of a risk because Canadians, like Taiwanese, like in many other countries, were concerned that we could lose our jobs to foreigners if we open it up too quick, too fast. But we found that instead, largely, this program has been successful because by opening it up to more talent, foreign talent, and allowing foreign talent to flow in, companies have done better. They've actually hired more Canadians as well, and they've expanded further, and it's been good for the Canadian economy. This program, it guarantees that through a dedicated service channel, it guarantees 2-week processing of work permits. The Government of Canada will give a decision to the companies that apply within 2 weeks. Not only that, but the approval rate has been 95%. 95%. And to date, about 73,000 workers, skilled workers, have come into Canada through this program since June 2017. So next slide, please. And just quick word, because the cost of talent is a huge issue. So I just want to point this out, that there are a couple of things driving this slide. Canada, as you may know, is big for software development. I think we rank number 6th, according to some measures, in terms of the total largest number of software developers. But this is a gain from CBRE, and it's looking at the cost, that's the vertical axis, of software engineers in North America, plotted against a measure they have of the sophistication, the kind of work these developers are doing from I don't know, how do they call this? They've got good, high, very high, and exceptional. And you'll see that the blue dots are various large centers in the US, so much more expensive than the major centers in Canada where software engineers are working as well. So why is this? Why is it about 20% more expensive to hire a software engineer in the US? Why is it cheaper in Canada? In part because of the policies that increase the supply of skilled and technology workers, but also a big factor is the fact that in Canada, like Taiwan, we've got public health insurance. So employers don't have to pay for private health insurance. So next slide, please. And finally, another very important policy piece. You know, in 2015, when Prime Minister Trudeau swore in his first cabinet, he brought in Canada's first gender-balanced cabinet. Diversity and creating a diverse workforce has been very important for our government. And, you know, there is an economic reason for trying to do that also. So McKinsey has written about this. I think in Taiwan's case, there are numbers available also. But in this one's from Boston Consulting, that estimated that if we close the gender gap in entrepreneurship in Canada, i.e. we have more women entrepreneurs entering and staying in the labor force, we could add 40 to 80 billion to Canada's GDP each year. So this is a significant economic incentive. And we've adopted a women entrepreneurship strategy, cost of $6 billion. The goals are to increase the number of women-owned business to support women starting out. Also to double the number of women entrepreneurs in Canada by 2025. It's a target. And another big one, this was started last year. The government announced a $30 billion program to bring in subsidized daycare across Canada. The goal is to achieve $10 a day daycare for families across Canada, with the hope that this will provide the support that young mothers need and young fathers to return to the workforce. And this also will hopefully grow the talent pool that is available for Canadian companies and for foreign investors. All right, next slide, which I think is the last slide. This is just a quick summary, but again, so your Canadian advantage when it comes to talent, it's about, yes, attracting talent from abroad, a key element for economic growth in Canada, enlarging the talent pool through record immigration levels and students, keeping talent by enticing foreign students to stay, providing talent for your businesses through the program I mentioned, MyTax, and other means, making room for your talent, i.e., this is by making it easier for foreign companies when you're in Canada to bring in the foreign and the tech talent and the skilled workers that you need, and making talent affordable. And that mainly is through the public health insurance, which you've got in Taiwan also. And finally, an emphasis on diverse talent, because we all know that in today's global economy, having a strong and diverse workforce sets you up very well to serve global customers. Now, just a quick word. I think I'm okay on time, but just a little bit about what our office is doing here in Taiwan that may interest you, some initiatives coming up. We're working on some joint supply chain initiatives. There's a joint supply chain study with Jingjibu and Canada, and Taitra is working on this also, to identify opportunities for Canadian and Taiwanese companies to invest in one another's supply chains in high-tech strategic areas. We're planning to bring an investment delegation to Taiwan in September, and we've also got an electric vehicle mission going to Canada. That one's led by TADA, the Taiwan Advanced Technology Development Association. At the same time, Canada and Taiwan are in the process of negotiating a foreign investment promotion and protection arrangement that should provide greater protection and encouragement to companies for investment in both directions. And also, we're working hard to see if this year we can expand that MyTax program. Already, 200 funded positions we've got for Taiwan, but we'd like to expand that further and work with more partners in Taiwan. So, I think that about wraps up my talk today, but thank you very much for the opportunity. 感谢你们。
好，感谢 Jordan。那因为时间的关系，我这边只能够再问一个问题。So I have a question for you, Jordan. 刚才有提到说，加拿大的政府有很多的政策在帮助企业找一些国外的人才，引进人才。那我们常常会觉得说，引进移民，那不就是会抢我们国民的工作吗？那加拿大人民难道不会担心吗？所以政府有什么样的配套来做到这样的政策
Okay, so in terms of the sort of political sensitivity, yeah, okay. Well, I think I touched on it in the presentation, that yes, these issues from a government perspective, a political perspective, can be very touchy. And initially, when Canada wanted to make it easier for foreign investors and Canadians to bring in foreign workers into Canada, there was concern. There was real concern. Up until that point in time, companies that were applying to do this in Canada had to go through a very cumbersome process. They had to prove that there were no other Canadians available willing to take those jobs before they could get a permit to bring in workers from abroad, right? And this was a very cumbersome, difficult process. Companies, businesses didn't like it. Politically, it had support from many Canadians. What the government did when they tried to loosen this up and allow it through the Global Skills Program, make it easier for companies to bring in foreign workers, they put some caveats on this. So you had to be, for example, a company that was growing quickly, or you had to be a new investor coming into Canada to set up a big operation, so that the government could then turn around and more or less prove or make a strong case in each situation that no, they're going to bring in quite a number of tech workers, but at the same time, they're also creating new jobs for Canadians. So it was a little bit of a negotiation and a bit of a two-way deal with each company, with each investor coming in. And we have found over time, as I mentioned, that this program has been very successful. It's meant that we can attract more foreign investment into Canada and overall create more jobs. It's been good for the economy.
Okay, thank you, Jordan.